More better.
I mean, I'm so loud. Hi, everyone. No, that is a no. That is a no. Good evening, everyone. I think my voice carries enough that everyone can hear me without a microphone here and in 2 buildings over. My name is Margaret Ordokanian. I am happy, honored to be welcoming today Tadeusz Dąbrowski. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it a little bit. On behalf of the Russian and Slavic Studies program, on behalf of the Polish program, and on behalf of the Damastad program that we have here at Hunter College. Tadeusz is a poet, essayist, critic. He's the editor-in-chief of the literary bi-monthly Topos. He has been published in the New Yorker, Paris Review, Boston Review, Threepenny Review, Plowshares, Agni, American Poetry Review, Poetry Daily, wow, Guernica, and others. He's the recipient of stipends awarded by Yaddo in 2015, the Omi International Arts Center in New York in 2013, and the Vermont Studio Center in 2011. He has won numerous prizes and been nominated for the NIKE Award in 2010. His work has been translated into more than 30 languages. No, into 30 languages, not more than, very important. He's author of 10 volumes of poetry in his native Polish, of which the most recent are Scrabble, published in 2020, and I do not know how to pronounce the other one.
To jest fajka.
To jest fajka.
This is a pipe.
To jest fajka in 2022. He has published a novel, Bezdonna Kreska, in 2016,
Defenseless Line.
set in New York City, as well as a collection of essays on poetry entitled In Metaphor in 2024. 2 of his collections, Black Square and Posts, have been published in English by Sefer Press. He lives in Gdansk on a Baltic coast of Poland. And I just have to show you this because how beautiful is this book cover before I turn the microphone over. Thank you all so much for coming and joining us today. Thank you.
Excellent.
Good evening. It's a great honor to be here. It's been a long time since I read here at the Hunter College for the first time. So it's great to be here again. This reading is my last stop. It's the very last reading during this tour. I started in New Hampshire, then I had some readings in Boston, then in DC. That's this New York chapter is going to be finished with this event. So the purpose of this tour and this reading is this book. It's my third American collection. The first one was called Black Square and appeared when I was young. When I was still young, promising poet, and it was called Black Square, published by Sefer Press. The second collection of my poetry, the title of the second collection was Posts, and that's the third one, gathering together my poems from the last 3 or 4 years. And I really like this book because it's not only a collection of poems in English I got from my translator and I put into the book, but it's also likely kind of lyrical story which you can read from cover to cover. So I think the poetry book should be always at the same time an anthology. Anthology etymologically comes from bouquet. So anthology is something to be chosen from, particular separated pieces, but also poetry book is something to be read from desk to desk, to be read like a novel maybe, or like a story. So hopefully this book is a serious poetry book, not only a collection of poems, but also an entire story about our human condition, the ascent of man. The title comes from one of the poems included to this book. But The Scent of Man as a poem talks about this kind of scent, which is very unpleasant, a scent of homeless people. And as a contradiction to it, I decided to put a face of an innocent kid. The cover, it's my little son. To create the entire scale of our scent, a scent between this innocent scent and this scent of destroyed, fucked up, sometimes people. So, but before I will start reading from this book, I will turn back to my previous poetry collection posts, because every reading is also for me as an author an excuse, an opportunity to return to myself from the past and to call myself from the past and to try to examine if I'm still the same guy, if I'm still coherent if my identity is still the same, because we think, because we have for our entire life the same ID number, we think that we are the same people over the years, but we are not. Even our cells in our body are changing, like all of them every 7 years. So our life, it's never-ending transcription, some kind of repetition of ourselves. And poetry for me is also kind of campaign for coherent identity, to keep myself, to stay, to be myself still, and to recollect all those people who are living in me, because there are many identities we are keeping in us, and sometimes they don't know each other. The very good husband and father can be, totally poisoning guy sometimes, or it's like and I think that's a huge problem of identity today, because it's totally spread out. How to call it? Yeah. So poetry is also for me to give all of these people who inhabit us opportunities to meet each other, to see each other, and to say hello to each other. And so, okay, it's after this a bit too long introduction, I will start with a poem from my previous book about my very first reading in the US. It was 2009 at Harvard University, and in the first line there was a professor who fell asleep before I started to read and woke up at the applause. So already, while reading my previous poetry, I was completing this piece of poetry. So it's a kind of homage to this guy. Emerytowany profesorze Harvardu, dziękuję, że przyszedłeś na moje spotkanie. Choć miałeś do wyboru tyle innych atrakcji. Na górze czytał Szalamun, pomógł tworzmy dalej. Dziękuję, że przyszedłeś. Chociaż zacząłeś chrapać, zanim zacząłem czytać i obudziłeś się na brawach. Wspaniale było patrzeć, jak zapadasz się w fotel, jak się zanurzasz w wody płodowe snu odżywiając się moją metaforą przez niewidzialną pępowinę. A może wychodziłeś w tym czasie na kosmiczny spacer w kombinezonie słowiańskiej mowy, chroniącym cię przed próżnią? Lub nic ci się nie śniło. Byłeś zwyczajnie sobą po wylewie, a ja się utrzymywałem w poetyckiej śpiączce. Nie wiem, w każdym razie dziękuję, że przyszedłeś. Ważniejsza była dla mnie twoja obecność niż twoja nieobecność. Harvard Professor Emeritus, thank you for coming to my reading. Though you had so many other attractions to choose from. Upstairs, Shalom was speaking. Pamuk 2 doors down. Thank you for coming. Although you started to snore before I started to read, and you woke up again at the applause. It was wonderful to watch you sink into your chair, plunging into the amniotic fluid of sleep, nourishing yourself on my metaphors through an invisible umbilicus. Or maybe in the meantime you were out on a cosmic walk, wearing a spacesuit of Slavonic speech, protecting you from the void. Or else you had no dreams at all. You were your usual self post-stroke, and I was keeping you alive in a poetic coma. I don't know. In any case, thank you for coming. What mattered more to me was your presence than your absence. Zdanie. To jakbyś obudził się w zamkniętej celi i znalazł w kieszeni zdanie. W kieszeni kartka, a na nie jedno zdanie w nieznanym ci języku. I wiedziałbyś, że to zdanie jest kluczem do twojego życia i do tej celi. I spędziłbyś lata, próbując zrozumieć to zdanie, aż wreszcie by się pojął. Po jakimś czasie zrozumiałbyś, że znaczyło coś zupełnie innego i tak miałbyś 2 zdania, a potem 3 i 4 i 10, aż stworzyłbyś nowy język. Napisałbyś w tym języku powieść swojego życia i gdy byłbyś już stary, spostrzegłbyś, że drzwi celi są otwarte. Wyszedłbyś w świat, schodził go wzdłuż i wszerz, aż w cieniu wielkiego drzewa zatęskniłbyś za tamtym jednym zdaniem w nieznanym ci języku. Sentence. It's as if you'd woken in the locked cell and found in your pocket a slip of paper, and on it a single sentence in a language you don't know. And you'd be sure this sentence was the key to your life, also to this cell. And you'd spend years trying to decipher the sentence until finally you'd understand it, but after a while, you realize you got it wrong, and the sentence meant something else entirely. And so, you'd have 2 sentences, and then 3 and 4 and 10, until you'd created a new language. And in that language, you'd write a novel of your life. And once you'd reached old age, you'd notice the door of the cell was open. You'd go out into the world, you would walk the land and the breadth of it, until in the shade of a massive tree you would yearn for that one single sentence in a language you don't know. Hall of Mirrors. It's very dangerous to know too many words. Each of them has its flip side, which also has its flip side, and so on, ad infinitum. A mirrored hall of words, the sad side of happiness and the sad side of sorrow. Words with ears on the inside. A world thickly coated in panels of words is frightening. You don't know what's happening behind the wall or under the floor. Piętka. It's a poem about my problems with shopping. To nie tak, że nie smakował mi nasz chleb. Po prostu krajalnica pocięła go w grube kostki, bo zalegał w niej stary chleb, jakaś piętka, przez którą nasz chleb maszyna potraktowała jak ciąg dalszy tamtego chleba. Reasumując, dostałem zamiast bochenka pokrojonego w cienkie kromki kilka kawałków, które pokornie zabrałem do domu, bo chleba się nie marnuje, lecz nie dały się podzielić na cieńsze porcje. Sypały się w dłoniach, jak rajskie drzewo w tartaku. Więc to nie była moja ani twoja wina, ani nawet tej cudzej piętki, która nasz chleb ostatecznie zamieniła w wiór. Heel. It's not that I didn't like the taste of our bread. It's just that the slicer cut it into thick chunks because some old bread was lying in it. A heel that made the machine tread our loaf like a continuation of that loaf. To sum up, I was given, instead of a loaf cut into thin slices, several pieces, which I meekly took home because you don't waste bread, but they couldn't be divided into thinner pieces. They crumbled in our hands like the tree of life in a lumber mill. So it wasn't my fault, or yours, or even the fault of that alien heel which finally turned our bread into sawdust. Buty. Muszę zanieść do szewca. Mają tylko trochę wydartą piętę. Usłyszałem od mojej matki, trzymającej moje zimowe buty z czasu, gdy miałem żonę. Boots. I must take them to the cobbler. They've only got slightly worn down heels, says my mother, holding my winter boots from the days when I had a wife. Hilltop. Returning to the very same place. Let it be a hilltop with a view of the night city, where once you used to be when your whole life still lay ahead of you, when everything was before. Returning when it's already after, irrevocably, decisively. What a strange feeling it is, as if you had the gift of prophecy in a world without time. Okay, now we can make a little stop, yes, to ask some questions and to answer some questions.
Hi, everyone. Hi, thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm Monika Zaleska. I teach Polish literature here at Hunter, and Tadeusz and I are just going to talk for a few minutes about what he read, and then I would love if other people ask questions as well. So we'll just have a warm-up for your questions. I told you I wanted to ask you, first of all, about translation and how it is to read your poems in English, and do they feel like, sorry, wait a sec. How are they changed by reading them in another language? Like, do they feel like they're your poems? Are they transformed? What is your perspective on that? I'm curious as a translator myself, how it feels to be translated.
Translating is not only kind of professional activity or not only relationship between the writer and his translator, who is perhaps maybe not the very first, but one of the most sensitive readers. But we are translating almost every day. The best example of never-ending translation is a long-term relationship between people. marriage especially, almost every day you have to translate your version of reality to someone else's language or capability to understand. And you can't be sure if it's successful. But this kind of resistance is also a cue. It's our life. So I think that's the problems with communication. It's a part of its beauty. So language at the same time bring us closer to each other, but at the same time creates kind of barrier, which is a huge challenge for us to be overwalked, or so it's a skill, but at the same time it's kind of routine between us.
Yeah.
So but of course translating poetry is something even more complicated. There is no good translation without love. I mean, not always, personal love between, but sometimes that happens also. That the author and his translator are lovers or partners, but it's kind of highly emotional relationship. It's much more than exchanging. Something much more important, much deeper than professional deal between people. So that's why I hate all these festivals, for example, in Poland, devoted to the literature of particular country, and they promptly need to find 3 translators to translate 5 poetry books by the most recognizable Spanish or Chinese poets, and they have like 1 month for doing that, and everyone is satisfied. The translators are paid money were used, and but if the translator doesn't feel someone's work, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, but even if translator is a good reader, it doesn't mean that he is a good translator. So translator needs to be partly a poet himself. And Derrida said that is one. I'm not a big fan of popes of postmodernism like Derrida, but I have to agree when he says that poetry is kind of betraying betrayal, because translator has to go further from the original text to paradoxically get closer to it in the foreign language.
Yeah.
So that's something, looking through my poems translated in German or into English, I feel as I were, looking at me in a foggy mirror. So it seems to me that I am recognizing myself, the shape, general shape, but of course I don't feel it so deeply as I'm able to touch myself in Polish.
Yeah.
But what can you do? You have just trust your translator too. That he betrays you in a very
As accurately as possible.
Yeah.
Well, you also said you like to look back
And
on your...
I'm awful in this cooperation, because I'm asking thousands of questions to Antonia. Every comma, every line has to be discussed with her, and she doesn't like it. But she.
I was going to ask if you go back and forth, or she kind of takes it and turns it into, the translation that appears, or if you have more of a collaborative relationship.
Yeah, I think that Antonia also, I'm a good opportunity to her to learn Polish better. Also still, even me, I'm still, if you would ask me what is for me writing poetry, is also extending my Polish. So I still learn Polish. With every single poem, I'm even more rooted in my beautiful Polish language, which is beautiful because it makes possible to transcend its Polishness and to take my poetry, and that's what I want to say, to another culture, to make the poem important for Vietnamese reader, for example, in translation. But just at the beginning, it was because it was so fortunately rooted in my Polish language. So paradoxically, when I'm making or working on my Polish to make it better, it helps Antonia to make her Polish better and to make my poems in translation better. So writing poetry is never-ending lesson of what poetry is, and also a huge possibility to recognize who you are through your own poetry. Of course, it's not the most important thing, but I love days of my poems best, from which I got some knowledge, some new knowledge about myself. And sometimes these things are not always very pleasant. But the language is something you can't fully control. So the poem anyway finds its own way, and it's because cultural memory, something subconscious, subconsciously, but it's impossible to control the process in 100% fully. So anyway, it runs away. The poem runs away from me, and the most important question: why? He did it. It did it. And this distance between what I wanted to say and the final result is this kind of scale of self-recognition. Then you can ask a question, who is this guy, or what the language is doing with me. So it's a
Well, that's an interesting thing you're saying, because two of the poems you read, Sentence and Hall of Mirrors, to me were very much about, and tell me what you think if this is accurate, there almost seems to be a feeling like if only we had a smaller vocabulary or a sentence that could stand in for a whole language. There's this kind of like almost longing to be able to contain it or control it. But as you said, it kind of runs away from you. Am I seeing something there in those poems that you...
The language is kind of a golden cage.
Yeah.
So I think that to the deepest communion between writer and reader comes not within words, as far as we understand it, we are able to understand it, but out of language at all. So, because if I say love or spring or stone, we think we understand it because these are words taken from vocabulary, they're universal. But everyone here will connect this word and with his personal experience. So tonight, the word love will be meaning something entirely different for any of us. So if we are unable to meet in understanding within words, so perhaps the deepest meeting between an artist at all and its listener or reader, comes between lines on the dark side of language words in meaningful silence. So I always say that I'm doing my best to bring the reader using my language and its beauty, and using some skills, because some tricks sometimes, because poetry is not only a gift from heavens, it's also a craftsmanship. So I also know some tricks that they need to be hidden, of course, in a poem or behind a poem. So using the language to bring the reader to the precipice of language, and to let him know and to let him see the entire universe, which is undescribable, which is out of our mind. And this is perhaps the most painful and at the same time most beautiful thing which the poem can do with the reader, to let him feel how our capacities to understand this world are limited, and that this kind of point of view means not so much, and it's not so important for stone, bird, or wind, because the nightingale is dealing pretty well without our definition about sparrow or nightingale.
Yeah. Maybe I see the time. Maybe I'll ask one more question and then I'll open it up to you all. So you have this baby on the cover, your son, right?
Yes.
And you spoke in your introduction about feeling coherent as a person, or looking back on your poems and how we're kind of containing these multiplicity of identities. So what is it like now as a father poet? And maybe selfishly I'm wondering, because I just had a baby myself, so I'm just wondering how that changes how you think about poetry, maybe even just on a practical level of time. But also
I've been asked
philosophically
during one of the readings
Yeah.
How my kids influenced my writing.
Yeah.
And I replied that they didn't yet, because I simply haven't had time enough to put them or to get some inspiration from them to poetry, because I'm so overwhelmed. So it's hard to believe. Maybe if I had them in my 20s, I would be much more, powerful, had much more energy. But now it's really hard, especially in a small house.
Yeah.
Like that. So the only free time I have at home is the time spent in a restaurant, like 5 minutes in toilet, and then I'm doing my best to extend this time, simulating stomach problems, something like that. But it's really the only time in silence. And of course, at the office, sometimes when I finish my work, I can focus also on some my own stuff, something really creative. So I don't know how much kids helped me to stay myself, but I'm sure that they helped me to understand that there are some things in this world much more important than so-called career and fame, and they simply make you much more paradoxically, because at home you have circus, but deeply in your soul you feel chilled out, you feel silent, you feel peaceful, because you know that you have created something else, something besides of poetry.
Yeah.
Also, new human beings who perhaps will need poetry in their life. What would be wonderful. So I'm not sure. I couldn't explain now how the poetic creation, if it meets in any ways my physical, my multiplying. I don't know, but I really believe that both acts of creation come from the same source, from never-ending hunger for life. Oh yeah, we reached a pretty pathetic tune.
No. Shall I take some more questions? I saw a hand here, yes.
Thank you for tonight's reading. Since you yourself speak English, translations of your work must be so-called authorized, right? How does it work practically? Do you bicker over words over coffee, or do you exchange missives overnight with variations? How do you do it? And do you translate your own poetry?
No, it does look so. Antonia sent me. She's sending me, proofs, first versions of translations. Then I reading them already feel that maybe she simply hasn't recognized all the nuances which were in original. So I'm asking her, did you know that I wanted to say this, and this using sometimes one word, or did you recognize this little assonance, between the second and the 10th line in Polish? And sometimes, almost always, she says, yes, of course, I'm not stupid. But sometimes she says, no, I haven't. And then she corrects it. And we are coming back again and again to the same point, discussing almost everything. But even then, I can't be sure if it's still my poem, just at the end, because it's filtrated, it's refined in a machinery of her mind.
I was kind of aiming there. So your poem in English would you say it's a different poem, essentially? Because my second part of the question would be, do you translate your
it's
own
partly
poem?
different. I tell you something which I shouldn't tell, but yesterday I had a house reading, and one guy from the audience asked me if I know that the word sentence, the title of one of these poems, in English is deeper, it's much more meaningful, because it means not only zdanie, sentence in a literary way, but also wyrok. Wyrok.
Life sentence.
Jak jest wyrok w sądzie?
Like the punishment, the sentence, that you're sentenced to 10 years in jail.
Yes, which suits much better to this metaphor of cell than in Polish. So sometimes
It
may happen that in translation your poem is even better. Hopefully not in all cases, because then I would have to change my job.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Danuta. I teach Polish at Hunter College 101, 102. Please feel invited to learn Polish. And on the same translation note, which translated poem of yours is your favorite and why?
You mean my favorite in translation, or,
Yes.
or in the? maybe this one, which is a good advice. How should we read contemporary poetry? In Polish it works. It sounds this way. Do skutku. 1. Poezja jest wtedy, gdy czujesz to coś. Czujesz? 2. Jeżeli nie, przeczytaj wiersz ponownie. Until it works. 1. Poetry is when you feel that something. Feel it? 2. If you don't, read the poem again.
I like it too.
Yes. To co, przeczytam jeszcze parę, nie? Okej. Letter. Yesterday I sent you a letter, and today on the phone you tell me you are pregnant. I pack up and return. You greet me at the airport. You are even lovelier than in my letter. That's on its way to you. We build a house, our child grows, our parents shrink. Then a few years of sweat and tears in which we prudently pickle cabbage and gherkins for the ever colder days. In the coloring book of our life, there are fewer and fewer blank spaces. The crayons grow shorter. We try to be precise, but even so we go over the lines. We busy ourselves with everyday matters, and our paths are ever deeper. They start to look like tunnels. Meanwhile, my letter is on its way to you. You will open it when it suits you best. Father is leaving. Rain rings against the panes. Autumnal rain rings. A bee cycles a clover, and my father is leaving. He was as strong as bread, but has changed into a crumb. I place him on my lips, and I can taste the love. Father is leaving. I thought he would turn around again to see if I were watching, but he walked firmly on his fragile legs with the fluttering flag of his heart. I waited for him to look back, but perhaps he was afraid I would see him crying. Or maybe it was just that something was drawing him harder. Tension and resistance. Asked at the Poetry Festival whether a poem can be a form of resistance, I retort, it can. Just at its banks are a form of resistance for a river, a bird is a form of resistance for the wind, an electrical wire a form of resistance for a stream of electrons. The stream of language runs into resistance in poetry, and for a moment turns into a poem, which quivers, wails, sings, plays, and sometimes is silent. I guess that was my answer to their question. It's also possible that I sat without a word, thinking about the cable stretched above the meadows that sings in the freezing wind, although there flows through it the news of someone's death, amorous bubbling, all the world's jabber. Może jeszcze przeczytam coś. Creative reading. I'm trying to teach at the university in my town of Gdańsk creative writing but I'm not sure I believe in creative writing courses, because you're not able to implant someone talent, but you can teach people creative reading, and it's enough. It's the first step to be a poet, to become a poet. Creative reading. I remember the day when I gave you a volume by Charles Bukowski with some poems marked. When you read them, you got scared that in this tortuous way I was trying to drop you. Later, we were married to divorce after a number of years, as fine and fruitless as creative writing courses. Today, those poems fell into my hands again. I'm reading them at random, cautiously, to avoid doing you harm. Czy ja mam ten wiersz po polsku? Chyba gdzieś miał. Nie, dlaczego poezja jest ci niezbędna do życia? Jest. Dlaczego poezja jest ci niezbędna do życia? Bo snuje się po dworcu jak piękna ćpunka, którą chętnie byś przeleciał, gdyby nie twoja pozycja. Albo śmieć się w twarz jak dziecko, które byś rozpieszczał, gdyby było twoje. Albo wadzi jak niedołężna matka, która nic nie pamięta, robi pod siebie i którą żywcem zakopałbyś w lesie, gdyby nie twoja miłość do niej i twoja pozycja. Albo psuje ci humor jak wróżbitka, która dokładnie przepowiada twoją straconą przeszłość. Poezja jest ci potrzebna, żebyś czasami mógł wyjść z siebie, zobaczyć i nigdy nie wrócić. Why poetry is essential to you for life? Because it floats around the station like a pretty junkie whom you'll be happy to screw, if not for your position. Or it laughs in your face like a child that you would pamper if it were yours. Or it causes trouble, like a decrepit mother who can't remember a thing, who crabs herself, whom you would bury alive in the woods, if not for your love for her and your position. Or it spoils your mood like a fortune teller who accurately predicts your wasted past. Poetry is necessary to you, so sometimes you can get out of yourself, see, and never return. Communion. In a cluster of youthful heads, resembling a clump of honey mushrooms, I find my own. I'm looking defiantly into the lens, like into a hyper-special tunnel. A black and white photo of my first Holy Communion. I found it at the bottom of a drawer while sorting things out for my divorce. The boy in front of me has gone. He's smashed against the rocks while rafting on a river of vodka. The one with his mouth open, a missionary in the Argentine, was killed in an accident trying to swerve past a wild swine in the road, or in himself. My life too has ended many times over. Now I'm doing all I can to return to my pure, to forget. But as I look into the eyes of that same boy, I can see he wants to jump out of himself to anywhere, if only into me. And again, to the very first poems translated into English many years ago. One of them I jokingly call my private war against postmodernism, because the title is identical with the title of famous Roland Barthes' book, A Lover's Discourse Fragments. I caught her in the act of looking through a porn mag Pointing at a picture of a naked man, I asked her, "What is that?" "Ceci n'est pas un pipe," she answered me, taking me into the bracket of her legs. And today I came home early from work, and in the passage I bumped into a naked man and asked, "What is that?" Pointing at him, or rather at his manhood, freshly smeared in lipstick. "That's a pipe." I heard the answer from the woman with whom I'm still sleeping, because I cannot prove her infidelity. Dzisiaj z Twojego aktu wybrałem sobie oko i powiększałem je aż do granic ekranu, do granic rozdzielczości, a to jest na tyle wysoka, że można już w Ciebie uwierzyć. Powiększałem Twoje prawe oko, chcąc za ostatnim kliknięciem przeskoczyć na drugą stronę, obejrzeć duszę, albo przynajmniej siebie, rozklikanego. W pobliżu 44 powiększenia zobaczyłem swoją niewyraźną sylwetkę. Przy 66 zarys aparatu fotograficznego, czytelny tylko dla mnie, a dalej już nic więcej, nad szare prostokąty, poukładane ściśle jak cegły w murze, jak kamienie w ścianie płaczu, przed którą staję dzień i w nocy, aby wytrwale rozsadzać spojenia karteczkami z moimi wierszami. Resolution. Today I choose myself and I from your nude photo and enlarged it to the limits of the screen, to the limits of resolution. And that's high enough for one to believe in you. I enlarged your right eye, wanting after the final mouse click to jump to the other side, to examine your soul. Or at least my own clicked on self. Around the 44th enlargement, I saw my own foggy silhouette. At the 66th, the outline of the camera, readable to me alone, but beyond that, there was nothing but gray rectangles, neatly laid like the bricks in a house, like the stones in the wailing wall I stand in front of day and night, doggedly swelling the cracks with notes filled with my poems. W drugim pokoju leży ojciec. Czyta przed snem. Zawsze dawał mi wszystko, czego potrzebowałem. Wydaje mi się, że jestem dla niego dobry. Leżymy w sąsiednich pokojach. Jest cicho. Słychać wodę szemrzącą w kaloryferach. Mija czas. Cóż więcej mogę zrobić? Tulić go w nieskończoność? Powtarzać kocham cię? Nie sądzę. Więc leżę i myślę o jego starym sercu i malejącej liczbie pisanych mu uderzeń. Tyle miłości, z którą nie ma co zrobić. Father is lying in the other room, reading before sleep. He has always given me everything I needed. It seems to me I'm good to him. We are lying in adjacent rooms. It's quiet. I can hear water murmuring in the radiators. Time passes. What more can I do? Hug him into infinity, or keep repeating, I love you? I think not. So I lie here considering his aged heart and the dwindling number of beats that are its destiny. So much love and nothing to do with it.
Jakieś pytanie jeszcze? Tak?
Sure, let's pause here and maybe, are there any more questions? Okay, I have one in the back, then I have, so in the back first, hi.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for your reading discussion tonight. You've spoken about poems as meeting places, about poetry readings as opportunities to revisit ourselves. I'm curious about ambivalence and resistance in your writing. If there are any poems in this new collection or previous ones that you didn't want to share, or that when you wrote them, it seemed they didn't want to be shared?
Poetry, from its definition, it's something to be shared. So I treat poetry as an act of communication. So simple as shaking a hand or looking through someone's eyes. So just from the beginning, when the poem had its first version, first shape, I feel if it's something worth to be shared with someone, something in which there is not only me, but if there is space enough to meet someone, but on the other hand, this me and my personal experience and concrete is very important in poetry, because paradoxically, writing about is a wrong word, but writing from your own experience, only writing from your own experience, you can make the poem universal. So it's a paradox, but I'm not telling anything new, because T.S. Eliot wrote about it, a tradition and an individual talent, and he said that paradoxically, only being rooted in tradition, you can be innovative and you can be universal. And I say that going deeper and deeper into yourself and being honest with yourself, only then you can ensure the reader that your experience is also his experience.
One more? Yeah.
In your poetry, you blend the language of the sacred and the secular to speak about the most simple existential, the deepest existential aspects, affairs of our lives in such lightness. That's what I admire about your poetry. Against this book is publishing against the backdrop of political discourse, everyday discourse being bastardized, polarized. You use a lot of irony and humor in your poems, and in this polarized discourse, there's a lot of humor and irony that's bastardizing and flattening the language. My question is, do you allow, or how do you filter, or how do you not filter that language of the discourse to?
I simply barely read. I almost do not read Polish big influential portals, websites, newspapers, because it's garbage. It's not journalism anymore. If someone puts the title, your reaction, what he expects from you, kind of, there's a title and the second part is, oh, how stupid, or it's a scandal, or, So, most of journalism in Poland, treat you as idiots to not be, and that you are not able to understand the text correctly. So I simply avoid it, I skip it, I don't participate in this discourse, and I believe that poetry maybe should be the last island of area of independence from this kind of polarizing, because within a good poem, and for me the most important thing in metaphor is the highest level of metaphoric is oxymoron, in which we can meet. So within good poem, believer and unbeliever, the right guy and leftish guy, Christian guy and Muslim can meet within the same poem. So why to disturb the poem? Why to jak jest brudzić?
Pollinate.
Yeah, the
Pollute.
poem. So theoretically, poets are from definition independent because poetry isn't a big business. But on the other hand, if the poets, like here in the US, are sometimes very well paid at the universities for one evening, like $20,000. So this question appears: if they can really stay independent, that's money is something very dangerous for the poets. You can't even know which ways some kind of compromise expectations from all sides come when you are well paid. So I believe that poetry language is and should stay unpolitical, over political, or national also. But poetry is also something to be taken from language to another language. So I hate poetry which is used or which is intentionally created to support some, ideologies or something like that. One of the ideologies which strongly influences poetry today, in Poland too, is this trend called eco-poetics, for example. It's also kind of ideology, because of course there is nothing, I don't mind, I would support, I would love poetry, fighting for ecology, for cleaner work and so on. But this kind of, at least Polish poets writing this kind of stuff, they're using a very traditional religious form to express this, what's going on in ecology or something like that. So if you want to express this need to take care of our planet, just find a new language, rooted in this new circumstances, but don't use the form of litany, for example, in which God was replaced by wheels or trees or ocean. So that's a key, to find a new language to take care of these things, to talk about them. Yeah, that's a huge challenge. So all the isms are making poetry poor and flattering. Yeah.
I think we have to wrap up. Do you want to read one more?
Yeah, one very last poem,
Okay.
and we will. The word apple doesn't contain any truth about an apple. Just like its shape, color, smell, and taste. The truth isn't for inspecting, sniffing, or tasting. In saying apple, you're hardly eating one. In the space between the word apple and the truth of an apple happens. The space between the word death and the truth of death is the greatest. Within it, life happens. Between the word truth and the truth, what happens is death. Thank you so much for coming, for your attention, for questions, And 3 copies of my books are still available for today's special price. Cover price is only $18, but you can get a personalized dedication for free. Thank you very much, and thank you to the Polish Cultural Institute, who is the organizer or co-organizer of this entire tour. So many thanks to my colleagues from the Polish Cultural Institute and to Hunter College, and it's a great pleasure to be here.
Great to have you. Thank you so much.